Welcome to 101. I'm Greg Bassey, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper, and it's another big day here at PAC 14. We're going to talk about some congressional politics with our local congressional candidate, Jim Ireton. Jim, welcome.
Hi, Greg.
You're running for Congress.
Yes.
Now, for years, I have told you to run for Congress. Did you just start listening to me, or was this always your idea?
Let's remember that you and I go back 25 years. I was going to say 25. You're going to 30. So
Yeah.
we'll say 30.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear that Salisbury, being the largest city in the 1st Congressional District, Wycomico County, the 2nd biggest county in the 1st District, 6 years as mayor, 4 times elected to office in Salisbury here over the last 16 years. I don't think it comes as a surprise to you or to anyone else who knows you or knows me that I thought about it and looked at the record of the present congressman that we have and said, I think it's important that voters have a choice. So that's what I've done.
So it's a big hill to climb. You've got a pretty entrenched incumbent in a district that's not drawn in a way that would favor a Democrat, seemingly, but there's a long way to go before that. You've got to win a primary first.
Let's see, about 1,500 miles on my car in the last 4 weeks, which is, it has been an incredible experience. I don't mean like, it was awesome. That's not what I mean. I mean, what I have encountered is from Rising Sun to Tawnytown to Sudlersville to Snow Hill, the 1st District looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
Except it gets a little hilly there, just north of Chesapeake City as you're on 313 headed to where it turns in, or on 213. And that has been an interesting thing. When you're a kid who grows up here, you think everything is different when you get across the bay. And that's actually not the truth. Maryland looks a lot alike off of 97 or any of the big roads. We have started a strategy where we have to do well on Route 40 and Route 50. We have to do well on 213, 313, 113, and 13. We really have gotten into this groove of taking a look at all of the hyper-local issues that are going on. Chestertown, Easton, Hartford County, Cecil County, all of those places. We think that our problems here are only indicative of where we are right now as a community. Almost everywhere you go, the problems that people face are exactly the same.
Yeah, the 1st District has changed a lot. It used to have the Southern Maryland counties, so it was a very...
I rode on it in a bus lots of times as a child. Yes.
Right, yes. So when Tom McMillan was running, you were part of that campaign.
We go all the way back in this to about 1980 in being involved in these races and in politics.
Right.
So, yeah.
But now the district, it skews north, and our current Congressman Andy Harris is from Baltimore County, so
There's
he's
a little
from the
claw
Western Shore.
out of the redistricting comes this little claw that comes out. It looks like a little hook on a pterodactyl,
Right.
And at the end of that is Cockeysville, where he lives.
Right, and so it's not. It doesn't seem like it's part of the shore, but you're saying that the problems that people have are universal.
No, you take a look at the heroin problems that have afflicted Eastern Shore counties. It's the same over on the other side. You take a look at the lack of health insurance on the other side of the bridge. It looks exactly like it does on the shore. We've been very lucky. About 55,000 people on the Eastern Shore now have health insurance and are paying for it that didn't have it before. That number jumps up to about 125,000 in the counties I call it in the North 40,
Right.
north of Route 40.
Right.
So basically what you find is a race that has to do sort of with a geographic competition. So, you know, I have, in the last 2 weeks, been to Hartford County 3 times, Cecil County twice. I head back up to Cecil County again tomorrow night.
Now, people say to me, does he have a chance? And I say, yes, because he gets over there, he gets in the Democratic clubs, he knows the issues, he's very well spoken. What's the reception like?
Right now it's twofold. One, it's Democrats that have really been ignored certainly by the state party,
Yeah.
and and not necessarily by candidates in previous races, but they really haven't had anything to get hopeful about. We haven't put up some of the best candidates over the last 6 years. So the twinkle's back in their eye, and I think they're ready to work. The other thing that happens is when you just stop into mom and pop places and small stores and small restaurants all the way through the district, people have this same sort of reception when you tell them. They are like, oh, oh, you are. And then when you ask them, what they think of the incumbent congressman, like, well, he came the first time and hasn't been here since. That lends itself to being able to continue the conversation with people. Besides healthcare, besides the heroin epidemic, my laser-like focus on the issue that our farmers face is also getting noticed. Farmers from Pocomoke to Rhodesdale to Rising Sun. I've been on farms now 4 times talking with farmers about how we can stop using the bay and our farmers to split our people apart. And what I'm hearing from the farmers is that Andy showed up the first time, collected the campaign check, and hasn't been seen from since.
Right.
So I find it as an intellectual pursuit, learning about anaerobic digestion and what we're doing with cow manure to create heat and electricity. What we're getting ready to do in Rhodesdale and in Pocomoke with making sure that you can use chicken litter to create to power all of the chicken houses that a particular farmer has. I believe the technology is out there to fix this problem and have it done once and for all. Now, we hear liberal, we hear conservative, but I'm going to tell you that this chicken tax that just came out from legislators that are friends of mine on the other side of the bay. I couldn't oppose anything more vehemently. You're not going to solve the problem by shoving it down the throats of the people who are trying to make a living and trying to feed the world.
Right.
So what I find fascinating is the connection between foreign policy and chickens. The opening of Cuba. Purdue's been doing symposiums and work down there for about a decade now, and now it could really open up for us, which is really going to be good for the Eastern Shore economy. But we have to solve the problem of the nitrogen and the phosphorus in the bay. The farmers and the towns have done everything the state has asked them to do when it comes to reducing nitrogen and phosphorus levels in the tributaries that lead to the bay. Sometimes we are one city, a bunch of cities in Maryland. Sometimes we are a bunch of counties, and sometimes we are, at one point, all of Maryland. And at some points, Maryland is part of a larger picture in terms of the entire United States. I believe the leadership has to come from Washington to solve the problem so that we can get past this, let the farmers get back to doing the work that they do, let the environmentalists get back to enjoying the environment, and stop rehashing this every time we come up on a legislative cycle. I think that takes leadership. I don't think that leadership's been shown by the present congressman.
Yeah, now, help me with this, because this is a political thing, and I apologize, but is it to your betterment, is it best to run against Andy at this point, or should you be saying that I'm the candidate to challenge him after the primary?
I'm going to go on the assumption that I'm going to win the primary, and I'm running against Andy now.
So that's why it's a good thing to point out some of his flaws.
Well, I mean, it's not that it's a
Not
good
his flaws,
thing.
but
It's that it's an easy thing. One
Yeah.
local Tea Party activist told me that he's not really the Tea Party titan, he's the Tea Party opportunist.
Right.
Because he hasn't changed anything. In all his years as a career politician from Cockeysville, has never once lowered a fee, never once lowered a tax. That to me shows the demagoguery of the argument. I actually, even though I have lowered taxes and lowered fees, but at the same time moved the tax rate to the constant yield. Anytime that there was an increase in something, there was a corresponding decrease on the way back down, because I recognize that people, there's only a finite amount of money that people are able to pay and keep their families, above water. What happens with the present guy is I'm going to vote against the Farm Bill because I don't like poor people. What are the poor people buying with their SNAP benefits? Regardless of how efficient the SNAP program is or can be, which we all believe it can be more, we cut off our nose to spite our face when we vote against the Farm Bill because we don't like poor people. Changes to No Child Left Behind, didn't vote against that. Violence Against Women Act, didn't vote for that. The list goes on, and we've come to this conclusion that what we have is a situation where we keep sending a guy who wants to go make a point instead of making a difference. Now, your family, we have all lived through the previous 8-10 years, and we know what what the present congressman did to Congressman Gilchrist and to Congressman Cradville, two incredibly diligent public servants that they were. And the real question comes down to, are we really going to let him do it again? So my campaign is going to be a little different in that I'm not going to raise millions of dollars from the Koch brothers so I can run nasty commercials. I'm going to run a ground game going out there and getting people who have stopped going to vote because of the nastiness that we see on television and the yelling and screaming that we see on cable. I'm going to run a campaign based on facts, intelligence, reasonable leadership. You know, in our day, Greg, you know, we had people like Bob Michael and Alan Cranston and to some extent people like Arlen Specter before he went a little crazy and switched parties 4 times, I think.
Right.
But there were people out there who were willing to come together and solve the problems that we have. We just watched people like Andy Harris boot John Boehner off of Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
And that's not solving our problem. So I'm excited about having an intellectual discussion while being really pretty good at politics and being able to hold my own
Right.
against this guy who's going to come down and just scream liberal till he's hoarse, and it couldn't be any further from the truth.
Right. Now, as a Republican who's often accused of not being Republican enough, I completely
And that's
understand
what's happened. You know, they've corralled you out of the party, or people like you. I mean, I feel sorry for people like Matt Holloway and Carl Anderton who God, I hope they don't ever go off the reservation because, you know, the far right's going to come after them pretty quickly.
Right.
And they are conscientious, giving people who are working hard to make a difference in the lives of people with the issues that Maryland faces and the Wycomico County faces. But man, if they so much as say
Yeah.
anything that looks like progressive, moderate, let's try and get this job done, I mean, they're going to get booted just as fast as they can.
And that's always been my issue. I mean, the Senate needed Jesse Helms just as much as it did Ted Kennedy, but we always knew how each of those was going to vote on everything. And that's how it is with Andy Harris. You can present any issue to me, and I can tell you how he's going to vote, almost like a computer is in there, a robot is in there, going to vote a certain way based on ideology. And that's always bothered me because I think you should have a chance to evaluate each issue and vote your gut or vote your constituency, whatever.
I feel sorry for him because in his last in the Hartford Aegis, which is the local paper up there, like
Right.
yours down here, at his last town hall, because town halls have now become cheerleading sessions for
Yeah.
your whoever your congressman is, and that I don't think does anybody any good. But there were people standing up saying, Congressman, I know you believe that Social Security and Medicare is just another welfare program for people who don't want to work. And that really, I mean, this John Birch Society, these are the people who, like Joe Albero, don't believe that we landed on the moon, don't believe that John F. Kennedy's dead, and believes that the government's poisoning your water.
Right.
And they have really taken hold of what I believe is the Republican primary. You know, we have to have a discussion about, I think you can have a discussion about the problems and the issues that America faces right now without turning into a Sean Hannity, Rachel Maddow shouting match. What I tell people is that the reason that these far ideologues have taken over is because if you're watching television, in order to get people to watch, you have to get people to scream at one another because that's what sells ads.
Right.
And I say to the people who I speak to lots of times, I need you to stop watching Rachel Maddow and stop listening to public radio because they're just telling you what you already believe. I've been traveling the district talking to people about...
People love the echo chamber.
Well, the echo chamber makes it so that when it comes to school funding or changes in No Child Left Behind, we don't know that those things are happening until afterwards when we get people on television
Right.
yelling at each other about
Right.
it. That I think is it really is unfortunate. This district, I think I read it the other day, about 70% of the time it's been Republican, about 30% of the time it's been Democrat. About 40% of the time it's been incredible Republicans like Rogers Morton, who represented us in the mid-70s.
Who's, I think, the best congressman we ever had.
He was the tallest, as your newspaper reported.
He was 6'8".
And he also changed his middle initials to CB, Rogers C.B. Morton, after the Chesapeake Bay, because he believed it was the most important thing. We know that much of the pollution is coming from Pennsylvania, so my idea is why don't we solve the problem of farms in the Bay here? Market that technology, get it to Pennsylvania, and get this job done. Well, we can't do that because Andy's far right wing's got to scream the environmentalists and the communists are coming to get you. And our far left has made a cottage industry of all of the things, that it does to protect water quality. Neither of those two things is inherently bad, but it is not solving the problem. I want to go to Washington and solve the problem. I want to be that person that the speaker, whether it is Democrat or Republican, looks at and says, this is a guy I can put in the room and his mind isn't already made up. It's Salisbury. My mind was made up about slumlords, but how easy is that?
Right.
So I recognize that that there have been some incredible experiences here that allow me the opportunity to say, we cut water and sewer connection fees for business from the third highest on the Delmarva Peninsula to the second lowest. We lowered water and sewer rates for Salisbury residents 3 times, and then once did it for people who live outside the city limits.
Right.
The idea that you can just throw liberal and that's going to mean all you want is higher taxes doesn't stick this time. And I'm not going to stick my legs between my tail between my legs and not call him on what will be, just another set of nasty commercials.
Yeah, now, and watching you as mayor, you're not as liberal as people tell me that you are.
I think one of
were way
my
more
friends
pro-business
that's
than I
helping me with
expected.
this, talking about a safe and secure Israel, whether or not it means force or not, I think they almost fell off the chair. When you talk about the moderate regimes in Iran right now and the need for even more sanctions, when you talk about the changes in the Chinese economy with their gross domestic output of each of its citizens is about $13,000 a year, and we wonder why they're collapsing. They're just doing the exact same thing that we did in 2006. I think there has to be someone who is willing to say what is the path we can take where opportunity is afforded to everyone, because right now in our country opportunity is not being afforded to everyone. When the top 100 corporate executives in our country have more money in their retirement accounts than 50 million Americans with an average monthly Social Security retirement check of $276,000. Actually, it's not Social Security. It's going to be what they've paid in, but $276,000 a month. Now, you and I won't have $276,000 in there when we retire. So are we creating a plutocracy? But what the other side does so well is spin this, well, the reason why you don't have enough money in your 401k, Jim, is because you don't work hard enough. But now we're saying it to teachers, and now we're saying it to nurses. In North Carolina, a story the other day about subsidized housing for teachers. We have issues in Salisbury. People want to build another couple flea markets. When flea markets start to become your mall,
Right.
then you have a problem.
Right.
But the right wing, like Andy, it's sort of it's that little wink he gives to the camera. It's what I'm going to say when I walk out of here, when I'm with my own people. It's going to be that Democrats don't want people to work, and we should be giving tax cuts to everybody. I said it yesterday on the radio. Just give us the tax rate that we had under their hero, Ronald Reagan. Let's just do that.
Right.
And that makes it incredibly, incredibly much, much fairer for people who are in that middle class. Because now, for the first time, the middle class is smaller than the two other groups combined, the lower class and the super rich.
Now, as someone who's watched the first district congressional politics forever,
yes.
who, Roger C.B. Morton is my favorite congressman of all time. Who did you admire?
Can I tell you, there have been some characters in the
and
last 100 years.
I think that's what makes the first district so cool.
It is, and you have to remember.
Even Tommy Johnson, for all his flaws, was an incredible character.
We could go back and do a whole series of
Yeah.
one-on-ones about the evolution, but you got to remember who came, who was here. You go all the way back to Chesapeake and Michener. Lots of times the people who were here first were shipped from other places because they had to get them out.
They were told to leave.
And they ended up with this real, and I'll say this, libertarian streak, a sort of live and let live. That's what I love about living here, is that my politics are left. My view on money is very conservative. I do really feel like we should get out of other people's business and stop judging. And that really is a streak that goes through them. I really like some of the older ones, some of the ones that came in the 1920s. You had Goldsboro, and that Goldsboro was named after. You have a lot of them that were born in Vienna.
Right.
But of course, mine is Jesse DeShiel Price, who grew up right in Salisbury,
Yeah.
right outside of Salisbury, and then became a Salisbury city councilman in the early 1900s, I think 1902,
Right.
and then became the Democratic congressman in 1916. So I'm hoping that there is, and he's buried right 2 blocks from my house
Right, in Parsons Cemetery.
In fact, there are a lot of them born.
There's 3 congressmen
There's 3
in
of
there.
them. There's
Yeah.
3 of them, a governor, a senator.
Yeah.
It's a pretty incredible walk when I get the chance to do it.
Yeah. And for a long time, the district, that seat had bad luck attached to it.
Oh, you had suicides, you had and staff suicides. You had people indicted for bribery. You had, and that
Mills,
was both
Bob
parties.
Bauman, Roy Dyson.
It was just incredibly colorful. It was. But I did read the other day. I was reading that in Bauman's last campaign, he had raised about $176,000, and that was a huge amount of money back then.
Unbelievable, yeah.
A huge amount of money. But what I really see through all of them sort of is a moderate streak that says worrying about the oysters in the bay or oyster harvesting or oyster planting in the Tread Avon River, worrying about rural health, worrying about bridges that have got to get to, worrying about Crisfield transcended what they believed was
Right.
a Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative. And I think from what I can glean so far, except for somebody who keeps leaving a nasty message on my cell phone about how people should have ankle bracelets if they get assistance from the government in any way, shape, or form. I want to call back and go, does that mean my parents who get their Social Security checks should be hooked up? Most people are really, I read the other day this, about 17% of Americans are they're really angry, the anger that you seek. But really, it's not anger that's really where most people are. 40% of us are just flat out disappointed that these people act like this when they get there.
Right.
And I believe that there's a different way to do it. And the people who are waiting for a doctor to be able to see more heroin patients, because that's really what's holding up some of that problem now.
Right.
An old law that kept the number of people that a doctor could see who have a heroin addiction was very low. Senator Jeannie Shaheen from she has introduced a bill. That would be something I would do. It's sign on to cross file that bill in the House of Representatives.
Right.
Right away. Maryland is just such an interesting place because it has so many different moving parts, and all of them, surround that bay. All of them, right now, Governor Hogan's asking MEMA to ask FEMA if they need to come and see if some of the destruction that happened in Ocean City during the Snowzilla is eligible for federal aid. Now, this is the question I have for people. If Hurricane Sandy had been Ocean City, or it had been Oxford, or it had been Port Deposit, or it had been Chesapeake City,
Port Deposit floods all the time, and that's in your district.
Yeah, would this present congressman have voted no? Simply, I understand. We read what he said. Well, there was pork in there. Well, you're the one who says that this has to end. But it hasn't ended, and none of it has changed since the minute he went into the Maryland General Assembly. Tea Party Titan? No. Tea Party opportunist? Yes. We pay this guy $1.75 a year to do absolutely nothing. Chestertown right now dealing with that hospital that could change completely.
Yeah.
Washington College worried about it. All of the retirees that are there worried about it. The Tread Avon River in Easton and the oysters. You can go all the way through it. You can read every one of these little papers, whether it's the Carroll County Times, the Aegis, the Cecil Whig, the Star Democrat. All of them, it is the exact same problems that we read in the Daily Times and in the Salisbury Independent. And the question is whether or not you want to roll up your sleeves, figure out whether or not there is a federal issue for you to deal with, or whether or not it's just that the citizens need you there for that support and saying, we're going to get through this somehow.
Right.
But no, what we have from the other side is everyone who doesn't look like me. How many elections have we gone through now with people like this? Liberty and freedom, as long as you look like them, talk like them, act like them, and think like them. And I think that is making us less free. I think Andy Harris makes us less free because he's willing to slice us and dice us up the middle, down the side, to make sure that you're going to sit across the room and look at somebody and go, that person must be doing something that's bad for America. Because that's what,
Right.
that's the kind of campaigns these guys are on.
You picked Crisfield as the place to launch your campaign based on storm relief, and you used that to attack the congressman.
I didn't attack the congressman. I
Well.
simply said that was your vote and your vote was wrong. Those people paid their federal taxes. I paid my federal taxes, and that's exactly where I want my federal taxes to go. Is a 300-year event, which means it is not scheduled by science to happen, but once every 300 years.
Right.
And you think somebody could have gotten his, there's a phrase my mother would use, to get off your high horse because you think you know better than everybody else and get down there and help those people. Instead, it was Senator Mathias and Senator Mikulski and Senator Cardin and Martin O'Malley down there making sure that they're, and they still struggle.
Well, I'd not been down there in a while, and I kept hearing about how bad it was, and I was like, yeah, but I got down there. It's still a mess down there.
There's just been a mass exodus.
Yeah.
And there are some bright spots.
I mean, it's not like New Orleans, but it's close.
Right. There's some bright spots. The Heritage Foundation, the group working there, a group of young people trying to, I know a couple people who have moved there to retire.
Yeah.
But you can see it. It's just like riding through Salisbury's neighborhoods. You go through a stretch of really good, and then you get to wow, somebody forgot about this, but the work that Percy did and the work that Kim Lawson is doing, they are my heroes. Those two guys, in what they've been through and the challenges that they face.
The numbers don't stack up right. I mean, and you're correct in terms of the Democrats forfeiting the 1st District to Republican for life. I've always said that Andy Harris is congressman for life as long as he wants to be it, based on how the numbers are. But we did see when Barack Obama got elected that the turnout was so significant that Frank Cradaville was able to sneak in there. What do you think is going to happen in this presidential year? Will there be turnout somehow? Will Democrats show up this time? Because I think you need that to happen to have a chance.
There's a certain thing that I have come across in since 1980 being involved with this. Many times people on the Eastern Shore will vote for somebody who's from the Eastern Shore. We kind of knew Frank Cradaville down here. We became friends with him. I became very good friends with him. And
you
his
saw it in
family.
Gilchrist McMillan. People voted for Gilchrist because he was from the Eastern Shore.
Because he was from the shore.
Yeah.
And even in some of those Democratic primaries that were
Yeah.
down there, when Bennett Bosman ran, when Q Johnson, let's go all the way
People
back to
voted for Q, who was
people voted
completely
for Q.
unqualified.
Well, no, I don't think he was unqualified,
Yeah.
but he
Yeah.
was the image of what Delmarva was completely at
Right.
that time.
Right.
And we all went out and put up the signs for him. Now he lost because of the votes that came from the other side of the bridge. Just taking a look at the demographics and the numbers, geographically we are 55% of the district on the shore, the other side's 45%. When it comes to voting, it flips
They
back
turn
the
out,
other
yeah.
way. So really, I am hoping that there's excitement for the presidential race that brings people out. I think a lot of it depends on who the other side nominates. And I also think this, if Mr. Harris doesn't think that the Republican candidate is going to inspire people to come out and vote, and it looks like there might be a little bit of, oh, I'm not going, he'll try and hyper-localize the issues, and then, I'm sorry, you just get banned because you haven't done a damn thing in 6 years. So, you can, and none of this is anything, it's not top secret. I'm not going to, it isn't going to get bleeped out or blacked out on your show because I've said it. It's what's going to happen to him.
When you were the mayor, did he ever come in your office and offer help?
There was one time he came up to say hello when he was in town. He sent out a press release the other day that said, you have to remember that Jim Ireton campaigned against Larry Hogan. Well, yeah, this is my job, but I'm going to tell you this. I have praised Larry Hogan at every given opportunity that I could when he has sent highway user funds back to these cities that paid into it that the state kept. I have praised him at every given opportunity that I could. And I can tell you this. I've met Larry Hogan. I've met Larry Hogan's family. I've met Boyd Rutherford. And I can tell you that Andy Harris is no Larry Hogan in any way, shape, or form. He is no Carl Anderton. He is no any of the Republicans that I am friends with that are willing to work with people to get the job done. He is not any of them. He comes in and he figures out how he can slice and dice people to create enemies, pick up some campaign checks, go back to Cockeysville, collect his $175,000 a year, and not do anything of substance for the people of the Eastern Shore or the First District.
Why should people vote for you?
In the end, Greg, is three things, really. The laser-like focus to the issues that face us that I have used in Salisbury is exactly what's going to happen when I'm traveling to Marydale or Del Mar or Mardella, whether or not I'm in Tawnytown or Pocomoke, whether or not I'm in Oil City or Ocean City, it doesn't matter. The other thing that I think is important is that I really do believe that the Eastern Shore needs an Eastern Shore congressman, regardless of how it is sliced and diced with the rest of the 1st Congressional District. And then the other thing, the third thing that I think is most important to remember is that even though it is important for an Eastern Shore man to be, or woman to be, our representative, we must remember on the shore that it doesn't look any different anywhere else in the 1st District except it has hills. Route 40 looks just like Route 13 except it has hills. That is truly the only real difference. So, you know, when we get over into Carroll County, because that is the one last place I have to visit at this point, I'm lucky that I have family in every one of these counties, cousins and second cousins and third cousins. It is always a little bit more difficult for a Democrat to run for office because our answers are about statistics and they are about numbers, they are about science. And I'm not going to apologize for that. It's so easy to just yell rain tax, chicken tax, which I'm not for, but they boil these things down to things that elicit a response out of you that is immediately negative, that says, I don't think that's what Americans want. And I think that's one of the reasons that nobody buys a newspaper anymore, nobody turns on the television anymore to watch the news, is because they are tired of this same old sniping that goes on. I think reasonable, intellectual, data-based approach and a laser-like focus on the issues that face the people of the Eastern Shore is what we want. The question is that enough for people to go out and vote in the primary and the general election? So I hope they do.
He's Jim Ireton, our mayor here for a long time, city councilman. He's running for Congress. Jim, thanks for coming by today.
Thanks, Greg.
Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent newspaper, another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.